Everyone, welcome back to another episode of Reading a Book in Every Subgenre of Every Genre. I'm Elliot, and if this is your first time here, the premise is simple. I'm trying to read more books, and I'm using genres as the way to guide myself towards books that I wouldn't pick up otherwise. And the genre we'll be exploring this time is dystopian, and the book representing that is Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. This is a book I felt like I should have read in high school, however I didn't. And dystopian is actually a genre that I've read many books from, so this isn't exactly new. I really like dystopian. It kind of matches my cynical outlook on life. But what is dystopian? Well, dystopian has many interpretations, but there tends to be a few traits. One of them being technology and cultural shift, which causes the loss of environment or individualism through brainwashing, drugs, computers, etc. Another trait is the false utopia, which means that people living in a dystopian world are generally quite miserable, which is the opposite of a utopia, which means a perfect society. In a dystopian world, people tend to be afraid, or they're ignorant to certain things, or they're brainwashed, or they're just kept sedated by like this totalitarian government, which leads us to the third trait. A totalitarian government or corporation or philosophical belief or religion tends to rule over this society. And the fourth trait of a dystopian book is that there is this resistance that takes place against this totalitarian government or corporation or whatever. And it is this resistance that creates the plot of the story. So when you're creating a dystopian world, it requires you to write in a way that allows the audience to suspend their belief. One way to do that is to take what exists in the real world and flip it. In this story, the firemen are actually the ones that start the fire. And that kind of messes with our brain a little bit. But in the real world, we have conflicted feelings about other professions as well. Is that police officer stopping crime, or are they just arresting someone? Is the lawyer actually trying to provide justice, or is that lawyer sending another criminal back into society? By creating this conflict and having this uncertainty, it allows the audience to be drawn into the story because you're not recreating a world, you're replicating the one that is already quite familiar. In this world, firemen don't feel any shame about setting things on fire because those are the rules they live in. Books, they don't have emotions, they are just trash. And like janitors, they are cleaning up. And if someone chooses to sacrifice their life to protect trash, well, they are probably trash too. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the major themes of a dystopian story is whether or not the citizens are actually happy. Are you happy? What a confrontational question that the protagonist in the story has to deal with right away. Are you happy? It's so aggressive because society tells us that we are happy. We are happy if we follow these rules, do these things, watch the wall TV. Ignorance is bliss, right? And that is the theme of this book. It's why do we have to read? Why should we read? Why should we learn more when we're already so happy? One of the best dynamic in this book so far is the relationship between the husband and the wife, and how the wife is dependent on the husband and she's living this blissful life, but the husband has to go out in this world and confront it head on and see all the darkness of this world, all the things hidden, all the things taken away. And he's wondering, is this all worth it? Is this really what it's supposed to be? Does this make sense? One of the greatest challenges in any marriage is when one partner is happy and one partner isn't. And even when one partner isn't even happy but just content and the other isn't, that is where conflict happens. What I like about Fahrenheit 451 that separates it from the other dystopian books that I read before is that Fahrenheit 451, the story, the people in this book, they're not actually ruled by a government or a corporation or anything like that. They're actually ruled by a societal belief. Nobody wants someone else to make them feel stupid, right? So let's just burn all the books so we could be on an even playing field. We often blame the government for doing these awful things to us, but honestly, usually half the society supports what is happening. And those supporters, they don't really want to change their opinion because they don't want to feel stupid. Like the character Faber says, books are not magical. They're just receptacle to store information in, just like films, records, and old friends. In the story, Montag brings a book in front of a group of people to scare them, and that really shows how a harmless item can be perceived as dangerous as soon as you slap the label of illegal on it. And it makes you wonder what else in the world that is currently illegal is actually kind of harmless and is only made illegal to quote unquote protect us. And that makes me think a lot about censorship and how we should approach that as we head into the next decade. I'm really enjoying the book so far. I hope the second half is as good as the first. Even if it isn't, I'm definitely a fan of Ray Bradbury now. There's so much good writing technique in here. For example, in the beginning when he shows the passing of time with date and then a string of dialogue from Clarice, I thought that was done really well. And there's such great pacing with the dialogue between the husband and the wife, especially the scene where the husband has just brought the book home and he's pretending to be sick. I thought that was so well done. So Fahrenheit 451, I'm really enjoying it right now. I'm just thinking, like, if only I read it as a kid, I would be doing this as some sort of homework assignment and not this late night activity. But let me finish it and I'll give you my final thoughts, which is coming up right now. Thank you for continuing to watch this video. I just finished reading Fahrenheit 451 and here's how I feel about it. I like that the second half of the book becomes a fugitive story. I didn't see this coming, but not only is it a fugitive story, it becomes a self-reflection. As Montag is running away, he also realizes his old life is gone and all he has left is his memory. And with his future being so uncertain, he realized that he might not have anyone to pass his memories to. I think one of the main things this book taught me is how we should approach changing someone's opinion or changing a group's opinion. How reckless should we be? How aggressive should we be? How imposing should we be? Probably none at all, right? Because we don't want to come across as a threat. We don't want to be threatening to the people in charge because they have the power. They could just get rid of us. In a way, we have to fly close to the sun in order to be seen, but we don't want to fly so close that our wings get burned. Another part of the story that I want to talk about that I have mixed feelings about is the mechanical hound and how much it reminded me of that episode of Black Mirror with that robot that was invincible. However, I did like how Ray Bradbury describes the robot. He uses this phrase multiple times by saying that it's not alive and not dead, which I found kind of interesting because that is kind of how we talk about technology sometimes, at least when we feel kind of close to it, right? We say things like, my phone is dead or my computer is dead. Well, were they ever alive? Another part that reminded me a lot about the dysfunction of real life was during the news report for when Montag was running away and there's helicopters and there's mechanical hounds chasing after him, but then they lost track of him. So what did they do? They found a scapegoat and arrested and tortured that guy. Why? Also, the public wouldn't think that the government and the police are incompetent and inferior. This way, the public can continue trusting the government, the news, and all the people in charge, basically. This reminded me a lot about the term fake news and how important it is for the media to stay impartial, especially when it comes to calling out the government or the police for doing not the right thing, to actually launch an investigation to whether they arrested the right person, whether they tortured the right person or not. Another thing I like about this book is how short it is, because a war is actually happening in the background during the story, but not a lot of detail is given about it because I think Ray Bradbury shows a lot of restraint in just sticking with the character's immediate problem. I'm actually becoming a big fan of Ray Bradbury. I like his writing style a lot, especially his use of repetition. For example, during the part where Montag is running away and he's constantly needing to remind himself to just walk, don't run, don't look suspicious. I think that was done so well. Lastly, I want to talk about how this book ends, because the book ends with a few profound ideas that I really appreciated, especially this one, which is that books are vessels for stories, vessels for ideas, vessels for knowledge, But humans, we too can be these vessels. We too can carry stories, ideas, and knowledge within us and pass it on to other people, to the next generation. We won't last as long as books, so books are necessary, but if books are illegal, we could carry all that within us for time, hiding it, concealing it, and hoping once the world changes that books will be allowed again and we could put all that knowledge back onto paper so it could last a little while longer. And I think that is a very optimistic idea in this book. The next idea that I really liked is the idea that when someone dies, we don't actually miss the person. What we are missing is what the person did, what the person created, what the person said. We hear this all the time when a celebrity dies, that, oh no, we'll never get another movie out of them, or we'll never get another song out of this person. It feels like we are robbed in a way when this person is taken away from us. So we don't really miss who that person was. We miss what that person did for us. Lastly, what I think is a key theme in this book is that history repeats itself. In the story, it uses the example of a phoenix burning itself and then rising from the ashes. That cycle continues over and over because we don't learn from it. And although a phoenix is awesome, the act of burning itself doesn't feel like it needs to happen. And there's this optimistic outlook that after the war, things will get better. But then things will probably get bad again because history repeats itself and we never learn from the mistakes we've made. And although we are a phoenix, maybe we don't have to burn ourselves anymore. That is how I feel about Fahrenheit 451. Thank you for watching this video. Once again, it's representing the dystopian genre. And I'm Elliot. I'm reading a book in every subgenre of every genre. And if you're interested in joining me on this adventure, don't forget to subscribe. Here is a playlist of some of the other book discussions I've done in the past. I hope you enjoy them. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you next time.